Police are at a house where a large group of suspected illegal immigrants have been found in Parkmore, Sandton. Security officers were conducting routine checks in the area when they spotted the group. The person who allegedly kept them locked up has reportedly fled the scene. We have our very own Katlaho Sekhojo joining us live now from there. Katlaho, would you just share some of the details that you may have on the story, if any of at all? Because it seems that the person responsible for this may have indeed fled the scene.
Yes, indeed, Arabile, good morning. We're outside a house in Parkmore in the Sandton area, and it's still an active scene here where now have been confirmed with police that 44 Ethiopian nationals are in this house. They have informed police that they've been held against their will, and we have been informed by police that 17 of the 44 are minors. But to get more details, I do have with me Lieutenant Colonel Ntate Masondo to just give us more details. Thank you so much, Mr. Masondo. Can you tell us what's happening here? What's happening inside the house?
Yes, good morning and good morning to the viewers at home. Yes, it's true. In the early hours of this morning, the security officers were patrolling in this area. So then they heard people screaming from this house. So then they suspected that no, there's something going on. It's then that they got into the house. So they found these people who couldn't speak English. Then they called the police. We swiftly responded. We came here. When we arrived, we found that there are 44 illegal immigrants that are locked in 2 rooms here. And we started to question them. Unfortunately, there was a problem of language. They couldn't speak any language of South Africa. But the little information that we got is that they are from Ethiopia. Yes, but we are still waiting for the interpreter that will give us, or that will help us, so that we can get more information from them. From now, as I'm saying that, no, it's still early. What we can confirm that it's 44 of them, 17 of them are minors, and 27 of them are adults. For now, we are treating them as illegal immigrants pending further investigation.
And Ntate Masondo, what do we know about the owner of the house? So do we have a sense who brought them here, and how did they come into the country?
Yes, as I'm saying that, no, it's still early. We are still busy with our investigation, but what we can confirm that, no, we didn't find any South African person here. So for now, we don't know who is the owner of the house. As I'm saying that, no, those that we found here, they can't talk English. So you can see that it's not long that they are in the country, but you can see that they were held against their will, because as they were screaming, their rooms that they were in, they were locked. So it shows that somebody locked them inside.
Thank you very much, Ntate Masondo. So Arabile, you can see here, just to give you a sense of what the house looks like, there's a police vehicle which has reversed into the house, and it's understood that that's where the Ethiopian nationals will be put into the police car. And this is the house where they were kept, as the Lieutenant Colonel outlined there, not yet knowing who is the owner of this house and how they were brought here. And also that, he did mention earlier on when we were speaking that it appears that they may have been looking for employment in the country, but very clearly they being held in this house against their will, and certainly the police investigations are continuing.
Yeah, Katleho, a developing story indeed that we try to get a little bit more of then as the day progresses then as well. Please give us a heads up as well on any data and any information you certainly do have then as things progress. In fact, we might even just stay with you as you continue the update for now, as you continue to walk into the household, it looks like as well. And hopefully we can get just a little bit more with regards to the scene. Indeed, the police confirming that it seems like they're Ethiopian nationals that were kept against their will. They were found in a house in Sandton. We believe that the person responsible for perhaps keeping the people in that house, those Ethiopian men in that house, has fled the scene, it is alleged then. So we will try.
So in 2002, the OAU was officially replaced by the African Union. The AU was created to be more modern, active, and people-centered organization, focusing not just on unity, but also on peace and security, human rights, good governance, economic development. So, what is the OAU Refugee Convention? So, the 1969 OAU Convention governing the specific aspect of refugee problems in Africa is a treaty that builds on the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, then expands the definition of refugee. They expands the definition of refugee to include people who are fleeing from wars, external aggression, occupation, or massive human rights violation. It was created because African leaders at the time realized that many refugees in Africa weren't covered by the UN definition, which tended to focus more on individual persecution. So the treaty itself is still very important today, especially in African refugee law. Um, so we need to we keep hearing this, and it's very important that South Africa signed a treaty, which is true. We've had this one many times, even the mainstream news talk about it, but they don't explain to the public what are those treaty. They do say that South Africa signed this treaty, especially when South Africans say that it's enough now for refugees and asylum. South Africa should not take any more refugee or asylum. And the media would counteract and say, oh no, you've signed refugee, this treaty, and so on. So, yes, we must protect asylum seekers. As I said before, the only three that if you are a UN signature to UN refugee of 1951 convention, you must protect people who are fleeing persecution, must protect them. And so it does feel sometimes that South Africa is the only country that is carrying the refugee asylum burden in Africa, and South Africa is the least country that produces refugee asylum in Africa. So these conventions, UN Refugee Convention of 1951, the 1967 protocol that removed European only restriction. There was also this another one, 1969, as I've spoke about, OAU convention, which is really specific to Africa specific causes, like which may be war, colonial violence, and displacement. These treaties say if someone is fleeing war, torture, or political persecution, you can't just deport them. You must protect them until it's safe to go home. Okay? Post 1994, South Africa signed both the UN and OAU treaties. Of course, it wanted to clean up the apartheid image of inhumane that apartheid engaged in, to try and to demonstrate to the international community that they respect the rule of law. They are treating people with, provide them with safety and human rights. So, and then what they did, then they went extreme, no refugee camps. Refugees, often all of them live in poor community that were displaced during apartheid and are still displaced today. Big problem there. So it does really feels like South Africa is really the only country that's carrying this burden of African immigrants. Not just now, even not African immigrants now. There are Pakistani, there are Bangladesh, and there are a lot of Asian communities that are seeking refugee in South Africa. Now, it's not that South Africa is wrong for helping, it's that they're doing it without backup. While South African people, citizens, are still waiting for justice, meaning they're still waiting to have their homes, their land that were dispossessed during colonialization and apartheid. So, this is the big problem. Now, and also the other stuff is this unemployment. South Africa has the heart, but not the resources. Instead of blaming the poor, we should be asking, where is the African Union? Where are these countries? Where is the support? And why are smugglers, corrupt officials, and big businesses profiting from the suffering of both locals and migrants? So, yeah. So these treaties were designed to protect people fleeing war, persecution, or disaster. They say don't deport them, let them apply for asylum, and treat them with dignity. These are the 1951 UN Convention, Refugee UN Convention, and the 1967 Protocol and 1969 OAU Convention. So many African countries, they also signed this, but a few enforce them. Some, they like the camps, as we had with Zimbabweans that are putting people in prisons who are seeking asylum or refugee. They who are, yeah. Some really, they definitely deny asylum outright. They deny asylum outright. And I think Botswana also does that, doesn't? But Botswana is the safest country in Africa. And another thing that is also very much more different is that in South Africa, refugees, they live in the community. Those who are seeking asylum, they live in the communities. So if people have become refugees, it's actually different than asylum. So asylums, they live in a community. Refugees, they usually are citizens, or they treat them as citizens in most countries, including South Africa. The issue here is the asylum, because in asylum, someone that's coming in and claim to be facing a unfortunately persecution, but the authority at the time, they may not even have enough information about the circumstances of the person, especially if they walk into the border and you don't have the time to investigate it, to look at the security risk and other stuff. So this is where the issue is with South Africa. So because we know that townships, usually these Khalesia, Alexander, all this, they actually carry a lot of refugee burden, a lot of load. Not the elites, those elites who often use these immigrants to work at low of less than minimum wage. So they don't, they benefit from it, but the people who bear the burden are the most vulnerable people in the community in South Africa. So, and you also could see that even with these corrupt officials, the landlords, the so-called clever blacks that are called in South Africa, which would be the middle class black people who were living in these townships and suddenly got better and now moved out of townships. Now they bought a house in a suburb, and then they would then have rent these houses to these illegal immigrants, and then often exploit it, and with that bring about this problem in the very community of poor community in South Africa. This is the fact. Okay, and so you can also see that some of the employer that are exploiting them, especially in those informal um, employment like farmers, retail, like Uber driving. Yeah, they very much exploit these immigrants. Mostly, they are undocumented. Even though South Africa has asylum, so that people can get in and actually claim for asylum, they are not documented. So that means they have not claimed any asylum. They're just there being exploited. Even those who claim asylum, even those who find in the houses, that they found them in the houses there in South Africa, they usually do that and get them work underground, like in that shop in Tshwane. They would work there, and once they work and get in, and nobody would know who they are. They work there, and when they realize that they've been there for a while, they release them into the street, and then so that they can then go and claim asylum. Yeah. So there's a lot of that going on there as well. So you can see that really the system is very corrupt, and people are really very much abusing it. And the officials, yeah, also they may take advantage of it. We've seen some videos of some of them in jail as a result of these bribes they're taking from these people. That is also a problem. So yeah. So the real question is then, who else signed? We spoke about Uganda. They signed both the 1951 UN Convention and the 1969 OAU Convention. Uganda is actually, also like South Africa, do have a little bit smaller amount, but it's smaller amount of refugees, about 1.85 as of May 2025. They do allow some movements. They do offer them some healthcare and work permits. Egypt is also a signature to both treaties, but it severely limits refugee rights. They don't have refugee rights. Yeah, so they don't. Kenya, similar, spoke about that they keep them in camps. And yeah, so in 2021, the government ordered closure, threatened mass return, citing strain and security concerns of these camps. Uh, it is a very problematic, this issue, because as you can see, even in Europe, a lot of these illegal immigrants from Europe are from Africa. Okay, and Zambia, they've rectified this convention with reservation. They limiting the work, education, residence rights for refugees. So if someone came into Zambia, they wouldn't be able to work. They wouldn't be able to go to any schools. They would also not become residents of Zambia. So they would be protected. But those other things like work, education, are considered as additional measure. because, like I said, is to the three things must not do. You must not return them back. You must not. You must treat them with dignity. You must allow them to apply. Um, so Zimbabwe, they Zimbabwe signed this as well. Actually, it did sign. They did sign this. They signed this, but yeah, they're the highest countries that produce a lot of these problems actually. But they signed this. They signed this UN convention, and they rectified in 1981 with reservation as well. There is no atomic work permits in Zimbabwe. There's limited education rights, can designate where refugee live, where they can do that, and that is while they've signed it. They've signed it with reservation. Okay. Same thing with Malawi. Malawi, same. So they apply in Malawi is first principle, first country of asylum. That means that if the country like Mozambique had this problem last time, they would then take Mozambique because it's close to them. Um, yeah, it is a problem for Malawi. And as you see that a lot of them, they now are become now a problem for South Africa as well. You see? Now you got Tanzania as well. Tanzania has a long history of hosting refugees. They have some policy restrictions, but generally they are, very lenient, but they really don't offer any details about it or how they manage refugees. And this is around SADC region that I'm looking at now. So Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, Lesotho, Eswatini, Angola, DRC, Mauritius, they all have signed, but there's limited data on how they implement these uh, convention. They all of them, we know that they rely on camps and also very much restricted policy. Yeah. So South Africa feels like it's carrying the load alone because neighboring countries either they implement with strict limitation or they don't settle refugees locally. Many keep them in camps or under tight restrictions. Where's the African Union and regional support? Despite being part of the SADC, Zambia, Zimbabwe heavily restrict refugee rights. Zambia and Zimbabwe. And these people, the only one you hear them saying that Africa has no borders, never was border in Africa. You've had that person from the few videos that I did a while, Zimbabwean human rights was saying Africa had no borders, but you could, and then talk about xenophobia. I mean, the biggest xenophobia is this one that South Africa doesn't actually restrict refugees, but in Zimbabwe they have a strict restriction on refugees, and they even keep them in prison. So Malawi applies asylum rules as well. They don't also do not offer even integration. So leaving South Africa isolated and bearing this brunt of refugee. And I say for the Minister of Home Affairs, you need to align this refugee stuff with the neighboring countries. So you don't have to actually be their choice for many of them. So be similar to others. So because, like I said, there are things you must do. Other stuff that our ANC has offered all these years that has led to this problem, it must end because they're not really a must They're not obliged to do this stuff. They're not obliged to have these people opening spaza shop and working spaza shop. Not obliged to give them employment. Not obliged to, you can bring them basic stuff that are required, and you're also not obliged to settle them in the community. This is according to this convention. It is, it's, you can rectify it and not offer those type of stuff because don't have any more fund. There's no money because now we can see also that people are profiting from it. Landlords are profiting from it. The employers are corrupt. Officials are exploiting these migrants, and the people who are bearing the burden, like I said, are poor local black community in South Africa. So it's this stuff. It is a problem. It is a big problem, and when you look at here how people talk about it and in the news every day, it's shocking really to me that they've allowed this to continue.